Welcome to A Bold and Distant Future. We are here. I'm Roy, and we are a podcast that brings you information about what's going on in our country, trying to accentuate the positive as much as we possibly can. And I'm joined today by our good friend of the channel, Eddie. How you doing, Eddie?
Doing pretty good, as a
All
matter
right.
of fact.
Well, it's the day after May 1st. Yesterday was the National Day of Action, and there were lots of protests and lots of dissent on the streets. I haven't seen numbers at all in terms of who was out there and in what force, but I found a very interesting protest. I don't know if you heard about it, but instead of the typical May Day protests, it was a National Law Day of Action. Have you heard about this one?
I have not.
It's
As a matter of
very,
fact, I missed the whole May Day thing. I didn't get any notices for any of this.
mm. Well, this was an interesting one. It was happening in San Francisco, and it was also happening all around the country in different major cities. And it was primarily lawyers gathering and judges gathering at federal courthouses so they could all take their oath of office again in public and swearing that they would uphold the Constitution. It was very, very impactful. And I'll just show you a few pictures. I found a couple of them. Here's one in Boston. It wasn't your typical protest in the sense that there were a lot of people there in three-piece suits. You know what I mean?
I see.
A lot of lawyers, of course, and judges and legal type people.
You know, that guy in the very front there with the glasses looks a little bit like a young Mitch McConnell.
I don't normally rub elbows with lawyers too often. They were very committed, and they had a really great speaker, and a judge spoke and a couple of other people.
Did they do this at the Civic Center?
No, they did this at the federal courthouse
Oh,
In San Francisco on Golden Gate Avenue.
got it.
And there was probably over 1,000 people there. It wasn't a
That's
small gathering.
impressive.
It was impressive. And there were people holding signs up, and a lot of people brought, their, F Trump signs and that kind of thing as well. Full speeches were being given, and I really appreciated that because here's the judge that spoke, and she's the one that led everyone through at one point. They said, okay, how many lawyers are here? And I would say a third of the people raised their hand.
Amazing.
And then she said, we're going to lead you all through your oath to uphold the Constitution. And she would say a few words and they'd all reply, and they renewed their oath of being a lawyer. Really cool.
Fabulous.
Here's another picture in Washington, D.C. It happened. Here they are actually taking the oath. And it was uplifting, and it was hopeful, and it was smart. I really enjoyed it. Now here's some
Love
photo.
that. That is a great poster. One more lawyer who won't kiss the ring.
Yes, I really enjoyed seeing the posters and things people made because they were very literate. So here's one that I really enjoyed. I love the ones that you have to go home and research later. And so here's one that said, real leaders don't silence law firms, bullies do. Trump executive actions. Apparently what he did with these law firms, Perkins, Coie, Jenner, Block, Wilmer, and Hale, he tried to silence them and tried to stop them from, I guess they were law firms that supported a lot of people that were going up against him.
Right.
And
I do remember
do you remember this
hearing that.
story? Yeah. And so he barred their access to certain federal courthouses and federal buildings to try to, hamper their work. So very interesting afternoon. America in distress. A lot of upside down flags. In America, the law is king. We are a nation of laws. Without laws, we're pretty much sunk. We're counting on you. Thank you, judges. No one is above the law. This is the one I liked the most. I thought it was the most artistic and kind of full of content. Collapse and progress. You have apathy on one side, avarice on the other, and the pillars of rule of law, due process, separation of powers, and freedom of speech being chiseled away at.
That is a very nicely done.
Yeah, I thought it was very well done too. Then we marched down to City Hall, and there we met up with the other rabble rousers. It became more lively, but maybe less coherent in a way, because there's a lot of shouting on megaphones and so on. after we marched down to Civic Center.
Right.
But someone had this up, which was an interesting quote by Elon Musk and Hannah Arendt. I don't know if you know her work.
I don't.
She's a very interesting person. There's a documentary or two about her out there that are worth watching because she is a Jewish woman who was in Nazi Germany, escaped in 1933 or 32, and went to Paris, and then finally ended up in America, and then went back to Germany, I believe, and wrote about fascism. And one of her quotes, if you read her quote first, the death of human empathy is one of the earliest and most telling signs of a culture about to fall into barbarism. And of course, we all know that Elon Musk said the fundamental weakness of Western civilization is empathy. So these diametrically opposed ideas. And she's a very interesting thinker about fascism and how fascism, well, I think one of the things she talks about, one of the phrases she's coined in a way, is the banality of evil. How evil is just this, not this scary monster, as much as it is sometimes this sort of everyday thing that happens. I know it's much deeper than that, but interesting person to look into if you don't know her work. I've just watched a documentary or two about her.
Arendt or
Yeah,
just
there's
D?
a DT at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, Arendt, if I'm saying it right.
Yes, I believe that's it.
Yeah, you'll see her. She's all over the place. And she also, I did a lot of writing about the Nuremberg trials, kind of the aftermath of World War II, and very interesting person. Hands off. So that's all I have to say about the May 1st day of action, because I took a different route. But this is the 100th day anniversary, I guess, of Trump's second term in office, and they say his ratings are lower than any other president in decades.
Yes.
And they always try to spin it in some other way. It's like,
Well, not each news agency, but the news agencies that I've seen range from 39% to 41. And I believe there was only one that was at 41. There was several that were at 40, and there was a couple that were at 39.
well, the MAGAs are still sticking with them somehow through all of this. I don't know how, but they are. But
I
that's,
saw something, it's interesting that you say that. I saw something that said to the effect that it's not about Trump, it's about fucking the liberals because they
yes.
feel like they've been left out of the equation for so long.
Yeah, it's about owning the libs. That's the main thing. They don't care if they, go down in flames as long as they've owned the libs on the way down. That's all that matters.
Right.
It's a hatred fueled movement.
Hate and fear.
Hate and fear. Well, this happened in Canada. They've got
Indeed.
a new prime minister, Mark Carney, I think his name is,
Yes.
and he's the liberal candidate. I'm not sure if he was slated to win, but Trump's actions really opened the doors wide open for him.
There was a graph that showed where he was a couple of months ago until the message against Trump swung him the other way. And it's just like he's way down. It's one of those line graphs that show the arrow going down, down, down. And then I guess in his rhetoric, he started really talking against the Trump thing and he went up, up, up. And significant rise from where he was just a few months ago.
This incident in Canada might portend a lot of interesting things around the world. People around the world are going to start pulling down their dictators and their fascists. You know what I mean?
I do.
It could
I can
be,
be hopeful about that.
yeah, it could be replicated all around the world. The pendulum's going to swing back the other way. So that's hopeful
Yeah.
for me. This happened. Someone finally introduced articles of impeachment against Trump in the Congress.
Yes.
And the fellow's name is U.S. Congressman Sri Thanedar from Michigan. And they're saying, of course, it's probably not going to go forward because they just don't have the numbers in the Congress or the Senate to make it fly. But everyone's like, it's about time. I guess you couldn't impeach him on day one. You had to give him some amount of time.
The interesting thing about this is that it will call for a public vote
Mm,
on this agenda. And we could see that really coming into play in the next election cycle, which is a little less than 2 years away.
That's very true. When they have to make a public declaration, that'll be held, they'll be held accountable for that.
Yeah, there's no way to skirt it. This is
Right.
where you put your signature.
Exactly. I hadn't thought of that, but that is a very interesting point. Even if the impeachment itself fails, it's a record.
I think that's one of the pieces of strategy that went into this introduction.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to me that that's what they want. They want people to be on public record where they stand.
Mhm. It's a good idea.
We think about it in reference to what's going on. Here you're basically signing on. You stand with reducing medical coverage for millions of Americans. You stand with reducing Social Security if you can. You stand against all these other things. And you're putting your name on the line.
Hmm.
So,
Well, I will, when this gets voted on, I'll have to somehow find that record and post that up here.
yes.
That'll be interesting to see. This is depressing because as many of our viewers know, at the end of every show, I always flash up the 988 crisis lifeline
Yeah.
as a public service announcement. Well, this is apparently Trump has put forth a proposal to eliminate the 988 suicide and crisis lifeline.
Yeah.
And I think it's happening. Here it says effective October 1st, 2025. It's going to go away. Lack of compassion, lack of empathy.
It's his whole let's blame everything on DEI and get it out of here, right?
Right.
And anything that might post a truth that goes against the spin that he is pitching, he's going to try to mess with. So it's like today, the headline was he wants to defund PBS and NPR,
Hmm.
which they say he can't do. He wants to take away the tax exempt status of, is it Harvard? Yeah. So,
Mm.
and there's something like 150 or 180 colleges that have banded together to say we're not going to compromise our vision of what education is to serve you, basically.
Hmm.
So that's what we have. We have this anything that doesn't support the agenda that he's trying to push is going to be attacked,
Right.
and they'll do that however they can figure out.
Yeah. Bullying and intimidation. This is the last news story I have, and it's again one going back to a law issue because it was the arrest of the what state was she in? Who
Wisconsin,
Wisconsin, who let a defendant out of her courtroom, and then the judge was arrested. And then on top of it all, and what she did was probably wrong in the eyes of the law, and maybe she deserved that. But what Kash Patel, the FBI director, did was posted her perp walk, as they're calling it, handcuffed, being taken out of the courthouse, put it in his X feed saying no one is above the law. They say what Kash Patel did as the director of the FBI is already sort of an actionable offense to make her look guilty, to skew the public opinion about her before she's had a trial. So he might get in trouble for posting this picture on his Twitter feed or whatever this is.
it's interesting because the lack of any kind of censure or reprisal against actions that are happening that are obviously illegal. And I know there's a lot of lawsuits in action, but we're not getting much of a feed on what's taking place with those. In terms of illegal actions, like this being posted, I think is an illegal action.
You mean just the arrest of a judge this way?
Yeah, well, in terms of anything that they're doing that's illegal, which is a lot of stuff, we're not getting the feed on what has taken place to turn things around. Like this. This will obviously be thrown out. I can't imagine it going any other way.
It's definitely I mean, she's the first judge to be arrested, and by Kash Patel. The FBI took her out, I think. and we'll have to keep our eye on it. I know she's not being detained anymore. She's out on bail or something, but I think there's going to be a trial. From what I understand, I could be wrong, but I believe there's still going to be a trial about her actions.
Interesting.
But again, what he did before any kind of trial or hearing about her innocence or guilt, basically showing the perp walk and saying no one is above the law, basically finding her guilty himself before all of that is it will prejudice many people, and I think that's the thing that he did that was wrong. But then he was caught immediately because there was someone else at the side door too. But at the same time, what she did technically, I believe, was against the law. But again,
That depends, Roy.
yeah,
I've worked on a poster based on something else that I saw that basically states that ICE is not welcome without let me get the exact wording because I researched this on many sites and then I built this poster.
Hmm.
ICE and Homeland Security cannot enter without an arrest warrant signed by a judge. That's the big deal. They're doing this without any kind of consent whatsoever. And then the stuff underneath says, "This is our community. We know our rights. We do not consent. ICE and Homeland Security are not welcome here." And it's got a band of people of different colors and ages and nationalities. The reality is that these actions are being done all over the country illegally, as we have seen. There was um, Garcia, who's, been ordered by the Supreme Court to be brought back, and he's not being brought back. And then they got this Photoshop thing of his knuckles with M13. I'm sure you've seen pictures of that.
right.
MS-13, excuse me. There was a mother and two daughters who were here legally. The daughters are American citizens, abducted and disappeared. When you look at the lineup of people who have been disappeared who are legally here or American citizens, it's insane. And they're doing this without legal warrants. Talk about no one is above the law. When is that going to be looked into, these people that are doing this? Anyway, just tossing that out.
No, you're exactly right.
No one is above the law unless you're on the side of our beloved 47th. Yeah, what is it? That was in Animal Farm. All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others.
Right.
Remember that?
Yeah, I do. Well, that's a very good point you bring up. Did those ICE people have the proper warrant for arrest?
They don't.
And
Most of them
so,
have some kind of piece of paper that was written up by themselves, and that doesn't fly. That is not a legal arrest warrant.
mm, that's a very good point. I mean, I hope in some ways, I hope there is a trial that all of this stuff can come out, you know,
Yeah.
and
Well,
then maybe it'll create some kind of precedent.
I, you know, I have been wondering if I should just go down and have this poster professionally printed and start going door to door and seeing which businesses, start with restaurants and, the most obvious place where you're going to find immigrant workers and go from there and see if they are willing to post this on their premises.
On the one hand, I would think they'd want to, but on the other
Yes.
hand, they might not want to because then it might signal to them or to ICE that, hey, we have immigrants here, stay away. They go, oh, there are immigrants there? Okay, let's camp out in front and wait till they get off work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
So
my original thought was just go door to door in the downtown areas and offer it to everybody.
good work. It could make an impact.
We have a number of possibilities that would fit this bill.
Someone,
Wait a minute. Valentine is here to say something.
Okay, hey, Valentine.
what about someone we know that is in the military but was born abroad and now cannot go visit his
His dying father.
because the military, he's still in the military, and they have told him it would be unsafe for him. He could be arrested and not be able to return to the United States.
Wow,
We just learned that yesterday.
horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, it's unthinkable, these things that are happening to people.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
there's gonna be a
this is
backlash.
This is Valentine's brother that we're talking about.
Mm.
And his son, who's in the Navy, can't come to see him because he might not be able to get back into the U.S.
Wow. I'm putting more faith in the law every day. I wish I wish is it too late to become a lawyer myself? I think I don't have it in me. Well, I know I don't have it in me, but I
I
have a
think you
lot of
could do it if you put your mind to it. Roy, you got a lot of talents.
thanks. Thanks, Eddie. I appreciate the encouragement. I'm gonna go hit the books right now. I want to thank you, Eddie, for being here week after week, sorting through the topics of the day in a very level-headed and kind-hearted way. And I really appreciate your attendance here. And I hope to talk to you again next week if you're free.
You know what they say, inshallah, I will be here.
You're gonna get me deported with that inshallah stuff. Eddie. All right, everyone. This is a bold and distant future signing off. Thank you for listening. Have a
All
great
right.
day. Take
Have
care.
a good one.
Bye.